Well, hey there, it is 2024. This is our first show for the year. It is good to be back. And we thought we'd kick off the year with a 3-part series, and we've entitled it Your Best Year Yet. Part 1 is today, and we're going to be looking at how you are showing up. Are you making the most of your opportunities? And do you know which ones are the ones that hold the keys to future career development for you? In part 2, we're going to be looking at what do you really want? We're going to identify that and set some goals around it. And then in part 3, we're going to look at the action plan you need to have in behind those goals to really be successful and ensure that you get your best year yet. Now, Sacha and I would love to grow the podcast even bigger this year. So if you love this series, please share it with a friend, with a work colleague, or even grab some previous episodes and start flicking them around. Let's share the learning love. And the other thing that would be great, if you could jump into Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating, that would really help us. The algorithm loves it, and it's a really good way for us to promote the show. But enough from me, let's get on with the podcast.
Listen, laugh, and learn with Sacha and Ish as they share their experiences, thoughts, and tips to build skills that are not so average and a career that's not so ordinary. This is the Not So Breakfast Show.
All right, welcome to the Not So Breakfast Show, and this is season 5. Whoop whoop! First episode back for 2024. Oh man, it is feeling good to be back. We've got some fresh ideas for the show. We want to bring some new guests, some new topics, some new ways of looking at things. But some things that aren't going to change is this dynamic, Sacha, you and me, and what is going on in Sacha's world.
Well, I thought you were going to go some things that aren't new because they're old.
The
and
50-year-olds.
And I was going to say that's a really bitchy way to start the year, Ash.
No way. We don't want to start the year in a bitchy mindset. We are looking at a different type of mindset, and we want to create our best year yet. And that is pretty much the topic. And we're going to do this topic a little bit different. We're actually going to go a bit deeper than we would normally go in a 30-minute format. We're going to do this in 3 parts. So our best year yet is going to be a 3-part series, and we're doing part 1 today. And then we're going to do part 2 next week, and you'll get the gist from there, part 3 the week after that. So it's a 3-part series. And the topic that we're going to be doing straight away is basically a bit of a reality check, because we are going to explore, what do you want? Like, what do you actually want? Because it's hard to get your best year if you don't know what you want. And then we're going to look at action plans and behind that. But I thought maybe to start off with, we should just do a bit of a reality check of how are we actually showing up. And this can be at work. This can be at home. What are we doing in our day-to-day activities or our weekly activities or the things that we are needed to apply our energy to that may just be holding us back and we're not aware of it? So we go, I want to get the thing. Let's say that was a promotion. I want to get the promotion and I think I deserve the promotion. But this session is really the reality check of, are you positioning yourself to even get anything that you want because you're just going through the motions right now? And that's really where we're going to be spending the majority of our time in the first session today.
I have listened to everything that you've just said, and what's going through my head is when you said, let's go deeper. Do you remember that song that goes, let's go deeper, I want to go deeper? And it's kind of creepy, but it's kind of true. It's a great opportunity for us. Do you remember it? Let's go deeper, I want to go deeper. Maybe I'm not doing it right.
We must have gone to a different nightclub.
on that particular evening, yeah. I love this idea of being able to explore in a little bit more detail and this idea of your best year yet. I used to work with a guy, Philip Gould, shout out Philip, and whenever you asked him how he was, he had this stock standard response where he'd go, best ever. And it used to really, shout out again to you, Philip, piss me off because I found it really insincere. I'd go, this is not your best day ever. Yeah. And yet I've started to apply it over the last couple of years where I wake up in the morning and I think, what a great day to be alive. This is most likely going to be the best day of my life because I'm wiser than I was yesterday. I know more than I knew a week ago. I'm more prepared for what's coming. So I love this idea of saying every day can be a better day and every year we have ought to be our best year yet, however we define what best is, and not to be feeling like, oh, our best years are behind us, but to always be looking for what does the best year look like. And I think you're so right to start us by thinking about how are you actually existing in time and space right now? How are you showing up? What is life like for you? Because I think one of the dangers that we face is it's like those frogs that get boiled, right? You put them in the water and the temperature slowly increases, that classic old Malcolm Muggeridge story that he tells, that we just don't notice what's going on around us. And it's really easy to not stop, to not pause. We're just busy, 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 go, 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 Christmas, New Year, holidays, back to work. And to just take stock, just to take a moment and go, actually, what kind of energy am I putting out? You know, the people that you work with that are absolute pains in the asses, but they think they're really positive people. This is the chance for us to kind of reflect and go, how much energy and what kind of energy are we putting into stuff that matters to us?
Yeah, because otherwise we might actually put all these plans in place and we might actually have these great aspirations, but the way we are showing up in our day-to-day activity with our attitude or to the things that actually make a difference are not going to shift the dial for us. We're not going to get what we want because we're not getting recognized in the way that we need to be recognized. We're not applying our energy, our focus, and our value in the way that we need to be applying it. So why don't we start off by kind of introducing different levels of how we might be showing up? Because it's not true that we show up the same to everything. And I know there's a statement out there, this is how you do one thing is how you should be doing everything. Like you want to bring your best to everything. But I know that's not necessarily true. Mainly because we start to get a little bit mundane in some of the key activities that we might just be doing. And because we're bored, we're not bringing our best to those situations. So it's almost like at a base level, and let's just call it level 1, we're just showing up. We're literally in the room. We don't want to be in the room, but we're in the room. We might even be putting on a smile. We might actually be pretending like we're really into it, but we have no intention of bringing any energy. You know, that's probably the best version of it. The worst version of it is we're literally in the room and everybody can tell we don't want to be there.
Yeah, that's kind of level minus one, right? Level minus one is when you show up and you're actively detracting. But I want to check in with you first, Ish. I was clear from what you said, but I'm not sure of your opinion. Mm-hmm. Do you think we should be at the same level for everything that we do? Or do you think it's okay that there might be variations in our levels depending on the... I'm listening really carefully because I'm about to go and clean my car. And I want to know whether I need to be like at motivational speaker energy level when I clean my car. Or is it okay that we can pick when we might need to peak?
Yeah, I think we can pick when we want to peak, but I think that we should be intentional about it.
Okay.
Because imagine if you were at motivational level on something that was actually something that was just a day-to-day mundane. So let's say that you have a regular staff meeting. Let's say it's a staff meeting and you have to go to the staff meeting and you don't really want to be at the staff meeting, so you just show up and you're just there and then you just leave. Imagine if you were at that high motivational level and you brought that attitude into that meeting. So same meeting, but completely different response. To your point around cleaning the car, you could clean the car and begrudgingly clean the car and complain about it the whole time and just make it the worst painful experience of your entire life. Or you could bring a different attitude to that. Now, the car still needs to be cleaned. It's probably not the best analogy because it's something that you might do every now and then. But imagine if you were just bringing I'm just showing up to this relationship. I'm just showing up to this meeting. I'm just showing up to this project.
Yeah, gotcha.
There's nothing there. And that can actually be doing massive brain damage for you.
Well, I think I don't know if this is the level where quiet quitting comes in. So, you know, big word that's doing all the rounds at the moment, new word, but an old concept. This idea that there are people who turn up and do their bare minimum, but they're not a detractor, which means that they could be fired or their performance is so poor, but they just get enough done that their jobs are safe. And I absolutely agree with you about the brand damage that it does to your perception, how others perceive you, whether that's going to set you up for new opportunities and all of those external things. But I also think it's hugely damaging on an internal level, that I don't think we are designed as human beings to simply just turn up. I think there's something within us that's innate, whether you think it's because of some purpose-driven, religious, higher power, higher purpose, or simply an evolutionary, we have this drive to get better and improve. Whatever your basis for believing this to be true, I think it is true that we are built and born to thrive and strive and turn up and be our best. We want to be doing well in things that are purposeful and meaningful to us. And if we fall into this trap of, I just show up, I just get it done, and whether that's at work or at home, not only is the damage external in terms of how others perceive us, I think we are rotting from the inside out. And that to me is an even greater risk, because I think the first thing we owe the world is to be true to ourselves.
Yeah, and I think really what we're talking about is that slightly higher level, which is I'm just going to do minimal effort, right? So I'm just going to do what I consider they pay me to do. You know, I'm just going to put in just enough so that I don't get in trouble. And sometimes that will sound like you go, well, they just don't pay me enough to do what they want me to do, so I'm just going to put in minimal effort here. You know, I'm actually looking for another job, so I'm just going to put in minimal effort so that I don't get, you know, pulled into the office and growled at, or I don't get, you know, talked about sort of at a meeting behind my back. But when you do that minimal effort or quiet quitting or however we want to frame it, one, it actually tells your brain that what you're doing doesn't make a difference. So it's not like it's motivating you. It's not like it's, you know, kind of gearing you up to want to do more. It just gets you into this rut where you just go, okay, so this is what I do now.
This is my life now.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast from a lady called The Job Doctor. She's awesome. And she goes, no one ever gets promoted and excels because they nailed their job description. You know, the people that get promoted and excel and get the opportunities are the ones who are stepping up into opportunity, finding ways to bring creativity to their work and take those risks and take those opportunities and bring the energy. They're not just doing minimal.
Yeah, so
they're not just existing in their role.
If level 1 is showing up, what do the next levels look like?
Yeah, so level 1 is just showing up, existing, being in the room, putting on a smile, maybe if you have to. Level 2 is doing minimal effort, so just enough to not be on the radar. Right. And then level 3 is just where your business as usual. So you're good at your job and
reliable.
Yeah, you're reliable. You find it easy.
Consistent.
You don't have to do, you know, put in extra effort. There's no extra training for you to do. But you're so comfortable that in some ways nobody's looking at you either. So it's not like you're standing out. In some ways you are doing your job description, but you're not doing it in a way that's then using that as a platform to maybe get a promotion or get an opportunity or have a conversation.
And so you'll know people in your workplace that reach a plateau, and that's okay to go, this is me, I'm comfy, this is what I'm doing now, and if you can make that work, good. But that doesn't then entitle you to feel pissed off that opportunities aren't coming your way, because you're operating at a level that just means, this is me, I'm good, thanks.
Yeah, and you tend to get overtaken because someone comes into your work environment who does step up into an opportunity or puts their hand up for something, and all of a sudden they get promoted or get the pay rise or something happens to that person around you, and you go, well, that was not fair. I've been doing my job for ages. I'm really good at my job. And it's like, well, yeah, but they were the ones that actually stepped into the gap. They saw the opportunity. They saw what needed to be done, and they did it, and as a result they were the ones that got the opportunity to move forward. So the next level on from just BAU is actually looking to add value. So when people are starting to talk about you, they go, oh man, you know, Sacha, we should have her in the room. She really adds value to the conversations that we're having. Or we really want to have Peter in the meeting because he really adds value to his perspective on the way that he looks at things. So it's not just yes, you'll do the task. you're adding value in a way that's actually, that might be the way you connect people together. It might be the way that you can critically analyze something. It might be the way that, or the energy that you bring to a certain situation. But whatever that value is, if you can look to do that, that is at a higher level than just kind of going through a BAU, business as usual.
And I'm always interested in how often these things actually show up in attitudes that actually show a willingness to do the smaller things. So not always just I'm adding my massive value because I've thought of an idea that's going to increase the company turnover by $1 million in the next 2 years. If we take it right down to the examples that we often see in our coffee shops, is there will be window sills, for example, that you can see from the outside, but they're quite hard to access from the inside. But guests walking past can see the dead flies on that windowsill. And we've got a whole lot of staff that we just walk past those windowsills every day going, oh, there's the flies. I hope someone does something about that. Then there's a level of team member who will say, oh, I've seen someone needs to do something about the flies. So there's an added value in terms of the articulation of the problem. There's people who will go, would it be okay if I stayed a little bit later and did the flies? And so I'm good with that. That's at least showing the willingness. But the top tier person is the one that you come in and the flies are gone. Yeah. And they say, oh, I just saw that the flies needed doing, so I've done the flies. So there's a value add that's not always about what's the big thing. It's that, can you show your willingness to get stuck in and actually just fix the little things that are all solvable and done. See something, do it. See a problem, fix it. Pick the rubbish up. Do the thing that most needs doing next. And there's real value in that. Yeah,
and adding value to those situations, exactly what you said there. Suddenly people will take the aspect that you did something and they'll go, well, if they are looking at that in that way, then they will probably look at this in that way. Like here's someone that's actually showing a little bit of initiative, not sitting there kind of going, oh, well, you know, you guys should definitely fix this. I've identified this as a problem and here you go. It's like, here's a problem, and just starting to step into that space and use your initiative in a different way. And then the next level up from that is really where we start to go into actually creating new value. So looking at different ways of doing things, starting to innovate, starting to bring different perspective to a situation. So not just adding value in the way of that job needs to be done and I did it, actually going, that job needed to be done and I did it, and here's a way for us not to have to do that in the future, or here's another opportunity that we could all be looking at and starting to step in with solutions.
I love the story that I heard recently about two guys who they'd founded a company, they were leading the company, but it had gone a little bit astray, and they knew that their board was going to fire them. So classic move where you get investors on, you get an independent board, company doesn't continue to grow, it's not as profitable as it once was, and so those founders who are in those CEO, COO roles, they are in the gun. And a couple of the guys, the two of them, they got together, and one of them said to the other one, the board's going to fire us. If they re-employed us, and we came back in our same roles, what would we do? And they sat down and they spent 2 hours going, well, we'd have to cull that division, we'd get rid of those people, we'd have to stop selling that product, we'd have to double down on this one over here. And they did a whole 2 hour or lengthy session around what they would do. And then they just looked at each other and said, well, why don't we just do that now before they fire us? And they just got stuck in thinking that they were kind of powerless to move the things that needed to be moved. And so I love the intellectual exercise of saying, you're starting back at your company at the start of the year, you're thinking about the level of energy that you're bringing and the level of engagement and the level of care, and you're saying, if you were looking at things with fresh eyes, what would you do? And just do that. Don't leave all the good stuff and the glory to the person who's going to come after you if you can already see what needs to be done.
Yeah, because if not you, then who? Someone can figure it out. And I love that. If you're in the position and it's not where you want it to be, or people are starting to question why it's not being done in the way that it could be done, that kind of filter to look at it and kind of go, well, if I was a consultant, how would I do it? Or if I was reinventing this in a different way, or if I was to do it different, what might I do? And it's amazing how we can end up solving so much of the problem.
It's that classic restructure, right? Where you look at the restructure and you go, oh, there's not actually a job for me here. And so you might as well be the one that leads that. Because if you don't lead that, the next person coming in is going to see that too, and your job will be gone. And you'll have none of the dignity that you would have if you'd actually had the courage to lead that process. That fresh eyes, I love that.
Do you remember the joke about the CEO? And the CEO takes over this company, and the old CEO gives them 3 envelopes and says, look, these envelopes have served me well. I'll give you these 3 envelopes, and if anything, goes wrong, open up envelope number 1 first, and then if it goes wrong again, then number 2, and then number 3. So puts them in the drawer, and then a few months later, it's just stuff isn't going right. So he's like, oh, those envelopes. So he goes to the drawer and he opens it up, and inside it just says, blame the last CEO. And so he just goes, oh man, that last CEO, what the heck? So he starts blaming the last CEO, and it kind of takes the pressure off him for a little while, and everyone kind of goes, oh yeah, fair, cool. And, about a year later, it starts going wrong again. So he opens up envelope number 2, and it just says restructure. So it's like, okay, so restructures the company, and everything starts coming right, and that was all good. And then a few years go on, and everything starts going tits up again. And it's like, oh no, this isn't great. So he opens envelope number 3, and it just simply says, prepare 3 envelopes.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah. So why don't we pick up on that point you raised before about quiet quitting? Because one of the things that I think we get into with the quiet quitting thing, and we just kind of go, well, I'm just going to go below the radar. We mentioned the term around brand damage. So maybe we could just expand a little bit and more on that and what we actually mean by brand damage.
So what I mean by brand damage is everyone hates you and thinks you're a dick because you're not turning up and bringing anything. So that classic, what Louis C.K. calls a non-contributing zero. So you just turn into this non-contributing zero where you go, why do we even have them here?
Yeah, and then people start to judge you by that, right? So if senior management are looking at people for an opportunity, you're not even in the conversation because you're just kind of considered to be doing minimal effort or considered to be doing business as usual, but you're not in the high potential list. So the way that normal companies will work, or really good companies, they'll usually have some sort of talent recognition program and some sort of succession plan. So if one person gets hit by a bus, who have we got within our team that can step up and fill that space now without having to recruit? Then the talent recognition program is who do we think has got some talent out there that we should be investing in? And they might not go to that person and say, hey, we think you've got some potential and you've got talent. This could be just kind of happening in the background, and they kind of just throw you something one day or give you an opportunity or ask you to read something and just to get your opinion on it. That could be quite intentional. You might think of it as just, oh yeah, that was just something that happened. But often there is more in behind it. They might give you a little task just to see, do you actually say yes to it or do you not? So do you step up? Do you not? Do you just do your job? It might be outside your scope. It might be to interact with another department. It's all part often of succession planning and development. And even if it's not, use it as your own development. Like use those opportunities, because every time you have an opportunity to step up, have a better conversation, learn something, do something, prove something, that is building your brand equity and will set you up for the future.
And I think if you think about quiet quitting as being, well, maybe I'm damaging my brand within this organization, but no one external knows. So I can go to an interview somewhere else and put on my A game and be all sparky, joy. Well, it doesn't work like that. Particularly, the markets that we operate in New Zealand, tiny. Everybody knows everybody. And we are looking for people, as leaders, we're looking for people who are ambitious, who have some drive, who have some get up and go, who want to do things. And so if you're saying, look, I'm just going to quietly quit, it's only the external economic environment that's even enabled that. So because job markets have become so tight, it was possible for people to quietly quit and employers to go, we just need someone to turn up. There's a global pandemic. People are sick. I just want bums on seats. Turn up, answer the phone. Great. As the labour market changes and we have an influx of immigration, the economic pressures change, and now jobs are harder to come by, people go from quietly quitting to labouring loudly. Oh, I'm noisy about my work so everyone see how much value I can bring. And I just think allowing the way that you show up to work to be dictated by the external market conditions, i.e. they can't fire me, there's no one else there that will replace me, it's a shitty way to live. And if you think about in a personal context, you go, well, I'm just going to be pretty average in my marriage because what are they going to do, replace me? I'm just going to be an average parent because, I didn't have a parent, so they're lucky to have me at all. As soon as you find yourself giving excuses for the way that you behave, I don't train enough for my social soccer club, but who cares, it's hard to get a goalie. Whenever you are starting to give yourself that excuse, just recognize how far you are from living a lit up life and living a life where you're on purpose and on point and on fire and energetic and all of those good things that come your way once you have a little bit of fire in your belly. When we step back from that, I think life just gets harder and harder and harder, and that in itself becomes a death spiral.
And you may actually want to think of another version of quiet quitting, which is hiding.
Yeah.
And because you can work from home now, and that is a thing, and we know that companies are trying to get people back into the office, we tell ourselves that we are more efficient at home. And sometimes that is actually true. In fact, a lot of the time it's true. You can focus better, you can take those little mini breaks when you want to, you don't have to do the commute thing. There is a whole lot of advantages. But you are not visible. And when you are not visible, you are not on anybody's radar. So if you are opting to work from home more and more and more, and you're wondering why the opportunities aren't coming or the promotions aren't coming, it's because there's no water cooler conversations. It's because they can't just come out of their office and have a quick chat with you. It's because you can't see any of the problems that are going on around you because you're not aware of them. You can't overhear the conversations. So be aware that although you may not be quiet quitting, the fact that you are hiding could be working against you.
I like that a lot.
Another thing that we may want to consider when we talk about, building our best year yet and recognizing how we're showing up is starting to look at some of the factors around how we might be perceived when things go wrong. So when we're under pressure, or when we don't do something quite right, or when something is not going quite right. So if we're under pressure, do we shut down? Are we not responsive? Do we not want to work with people? We start to kind of get quite internal with ourselves, and we don't tend to interact with anybody else because, we're under pressure and we're working hard. Or if something goes wrong, do we blame? Do we point fingers? Do we avoid conversations? Do we not want to face up to the fact that maybe we had something to do with that, and acknowledging that and saying, and here's what I'm going to put in place so that doesn't happen anymore? Our responses to those situations are part of our brand, and they're also part of the awareness. So when we start to look at things like what you want later on, we need to filter back through. Opportunities will come based on your personal brand, how you're showing up, and if this is working against you, it's something to be aware of. It's like a blind spot, I guess, would be another way to put it.
Well, I have a really tangible example of this that is really silly, but I think it helps. And that is that, do you remember when I have rules for myself about what I wear when I go outside of the house? So I've got these new rules that go, when you leave the house, you never know who you're going to bump into. So just don't go to the supermarket in your gardening clothes, because it's really easy. I shop every day, so I'll be out in the garden in the late afternoon, and I think, I just need to run and grab some steak. Supermarket's like 10 minutes away. I buy fresh meat most days. So I get in the car and I go, and then I go, won't see anybody, and inevitably I bump into someone that I wish I wasn't wearing my gardening clothes when I'm in front of them. And so I think what we sometimes do is we let the gardening clothes version of ourselves be on display when we ought not to. So how that kind of plays out is we get off the phone and we say to our teammates, oh, you won't believe what that arsehole, blah, 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 and off we go. We vent without realising that actually impacts people around us. And when they are then asked, oh, what's it like to work with Ish? And they go, oh, he's nice enough, but he kind of doesn't take bad news very well. He vents and storms off, and you think you're just kind of letting a valve off, but you wouldn't in a job interview when they say, how do you handle bad news there? What if someone rings you up and has a go at you, how do you handle that?
I tend to get really angry and passive-aggressive.
Yell at my colleagues. So think about, what is the best version of yourself? How would you describe your idealized self in a job interview? And just try and live up to that. Just have the discipline to be who you think you should be. And that's often by putting that little micro pause in. So the close example is silly, but it keeps happening to me. It keeps happening. That I keep bumping into people who are, I don't want to say high-powered, but they're people who I might want them to book me for their big national conference. And I just look like the cat has dragged me in. And I'm like, hi, Happy New Year. I knew I shouldn't have. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Could you not just, what's the flip of that? Like, what's the version of that that's about your professionalism, not just about the surface things, about how you look? How do you show up in those kind of pressure situations? And I see it a lot with stress transference. So if you're in a middle management position, one of the key things you've got to think about in terms of showing up is, how do you take the inputs either from the market, from the sales data, from your SLT, when you then talk to your team, how are you able to take what might have been a negative/critical message and turn it into something that's empowering?
Yeah. Because
too often in middle management, what we do is we do this kind of stress transference. So SLT ring and say, sales data's poor for January. And we feel stink about that. And because we don't have the maturity to sit with that stinkness and go, okay, I need to get a plan. What are we going to do? We want to feel better straight away. So how we feel better straight away is we ring someone and say, sales data's shit for January. What are you doing about it? And then what we can do is next time we see SLT, we can go, well, yeah, after that call, I really gave them a bloody rev up. As if that's actually going to change anything. Yeah. And, we use that analogy of a water filter where we go, all the inputs come in and our job is to kind of just clean that message up so that it ends up being empowering. And it's exactly the same with kids, man. I don't know if you've been ever in a situation where, Joe might say to you, those kids, rah, 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 rah. And so you go, oh, I don't like how this feels. So you go down the stairs and you go, kids, your mother, rah, rah. You just kind of pass it on. It's like, just pass it on. Yeah. Someone at some point has to filter it, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean the thing doesn't need to be addressed. It just means it needs to be addressed in a way that's really positive. And let me share this one other tip.
Okay.
I read this and I loved it, and it came from Adam Grant, who's the reasonably famous organizational psychologist. And he said, when someone's new at a task, give them lots of praise and positive feedback. When someone is more expert in the task, give them the coaching and the critical feedback because they are ready to grow and learn and get better. Yeah. And I think we sometimes get that round the wrong way.
Totally.
When people are new and not doing such a great job, we go, here's the 4 things that you have to fix and you have to get better and you have to do this and you have to do that. And then when people reach a level of competency, we go, you're going really well, just kind of keep going, when it's actually the other way around. The rookies need you're doing great, keep going, couple of things, well done. And the more experienced people need you're doing great, but here's the 3 things I really want you to think about improving.
Yeah, I love
and
that.
That really hit home to me. I think I can improve in that area.
All right, so really what we're talking about is...
I love this because when you go, really what we're talking about, I'm like, if you haven't kept up for the last 25 minutes.
If you haven't kept up.
If we've not been clear, here's the summary.
What we have been talking
What
about.
we've been trying to say
is making sure that maybe even before we get into the goal setting and then the action plans, which we are going to get into in the next few weeks, is just a little bit of a sense check. How are you perceived? What are the areas in your week? What are the tasks? What are the relationships? What are the things that you need to do maybe in your day-to-day that you're just showing up for? Or you're just doing a minimal effort? Or maybe you're just business as usual. You're actually doing a good job, but no one's noticing. And could you just level up? What if you took that key weekly whip meeting that you have with your boss that you really struggle with, and instead of just showing up, smiling, making a few pretend notes and then walking away, maybe you should just go in with an attitude of, how do I add some value to this? How do I actually take our relationships to the next level? How do I add new value? How do I, prepare more, pinpoint those key activities, those key relationships, and then let's start there. How are you showing up?
And let's be super clear that showing up with more energy, more enthusiasm, looking to add more value doesn't exclusively mean doing more. Sometimes it means being brave enough to do less, turning up to the WIP meeting and saying, boss, I think these 3 things we do are a waste of our time. Let's stop doing them. And here's something over the break I've thought about we should replace them with. So it's not just about working harder for the man. It's about getting smarter and delivering value in a way that helps you and helps the organisation where you work. Everybody wins, so much winning.
So much winning.
Your best year yet.
Hey, guess what I learnt to do over the break, Sasha?
Yes, please impress me. I'm ready because you're always learning.
I learned how to do the Rubik's Cube.
Oh!
I have always wanted to learn how to do it.
Did that take long?
Well, I did the classic. Well, if I'm going to learn it, I'm not going to sit there and just try to figure it out, because this guy does not figure stuff out like that, right? But I jumped on YouTube and I found someone who was teaching you the algorithms. And so I just followed it. Probably took me 4 hours to learn the first couple of base algorithms, to learn the first layer and the second layer, and then probably a day of learning and practicing it to learn the top layer. And then it took me another day to get it to the point where I didn't have to look at the clip anymore if I got stuck. And now I've been solving it about 7 times a day, and my fastest has been about 4 minutes and 57 seconds. So
that must feel so satisfying.
It feels really satisfying. I'm so excited, and it really has just got my brain going.
How long is the algorithm? So what I mean is, how many steps are there in it that you have to remember?
So the first part of the solving it is the white cross. So you want to solve the white side, and there's like a cross on it, but it has to be solved a certain way. It's probably hard to describe it in audio, but basically the middle white piece, and then there's a white piece that sits next to it, and then that one is green. The sticker off the white is green. That green needs to match up with the green center. Okay. And then on the other side, the white with the red sticker needs to match up with the red center, and so on. Yeah. So that one there is not so much of an algorithm. You just have to figure it out. And it gives you a couple of tips on basically how to get them into the right position. Yeah. Once you're in that position, then the next one of taking the corners and putting them in the right place is basically a 4-move algorithm.
Right, gotcha.
You just take the right piece, put it at the top, and then go. And depending on where the sticker is, it'll either be 3, 5, or 7 moves. And then you solve that, and then it just kind of continues up as you go. So to answer the question, it's 4 sets of algorithms and 1 base, thing you have to figure out.
I'm so proud of you. And for kids listening, the white is not magic. You can start with any colour. It's just that you start with white. And also for kids listening, this is not a waste of your time, because it's not actually about learning the Rubik's Cube. It's about having the discipline to learn something new, mastering something, trying it over and over again until it gets locked in, and then getting faster and faster. And that process is hugely valuable. And I have so much respect for you nailing that. Oh, yay! Yay-ish. And that can be a trick. We can do that. We can incorporate that into our stage act.
Yeah, that sounds good.
We can have a whole lot of unsolved cubes in the audience, and people can throw it onto the stage, and just within 4 minutes while you're talking, you can solve it. Amazing. I love this for us. Coming to Vegas in 2025.
A little tip for young players, though, who are just learning how to do it. If you do spend a couple of days working on the Rubik's Cube, you can't use your forearms for a couple of days after that. Turns out quite a few muscles being used.
Wow. There's also one more tip for young people. You can peel the stickers off and move them if you need to.
Great.
But it's cheating. You only cheat yourself.